Hi, welcome to this on the spot live premiere. Welcome if you're currently here. It's literally on the spot. It wasn't planned. It is currently nighttime. It's very dark outside. I'm in a shed and there's quite a few spiders in here. So if I do suddenly run away, that's probably because a spider has dropped on me. But this video is directed at Bob Farrell. Okay. I tried mentioning you, tagging you in the title of this video, but I don't think it was successful, as when I tried typing your name in, YouTube didn't auto-detect it. So hopefully anyone and everyone watching, can you repost or let Bob Farrell know about this video so he can watch it, okay? So I looked at Bob Farrell's recent video. I think it might have been Tom Evans that shared the link. Noticed there was a few comments last night as well, people talking about Bob's recent live stream or something, saying that things weren't going so great. Saw one video, I think it was a 19-minute one, and he was just like talking about a range of different things. Some stuff to do with Dylan Rounds, it being a bit of a mess and a lot going on. Other stuff about his own performance on YouTube due to age or something. I can get through a few of those points, okay? Give my analysis on the situation. So reality is Bob Farrell. I'm not the type of person to say, don't give up, keep on going, have hope. I'm not quite that level of delusional positivism. But what I will say, Bob, is first thing, you do what needs to be done. And second of all, when it comes to the YouTube situation, the platform itself, obviously many different themes, communities, areas, it can be very rough at times, of course. Example, Dylan Rounds' case. I've come across it myself, but I did come across it as well a couple of years back, so I knew what to expect and, you know, how humans would behave, like the patterns of them. So I think when it comes to performance-wise on YouTube, do you have to be of a certain age to be able to do YouTube? Not really. I mean, YouTube might have certain restrictions if you're like much younger, but you know, for the most part, it's manageable. I guess it just comes down to the resistance part. You know, are you able to withstand, take the resistance? If it's far greater than what others experience, then it might be more difficult. I don't know, some people were suggesting or saying, pointing out that when Bob was doing his live streams, that either people appeared on panel, the wrong type of people, or there was some inappropriate stuff being displayed. I'm not quite sure. I'm sure if that is the case, that's happened in the past with other people at times. But I think, you know, at the end of the day, the factor that plays a role in levels of resistance is if you're classified as one of the targets, and then that can be an interlocking factor with who you associate yourself with. It is avoidable, but if you're in a situation where you get on well with certain individuals who may not be, you know, favorited by others, it can be a bit more of a messy situation. When it comes to the age factor, Bob, I have no clue how old you are, but as for coming across people in previous mystery cases, such as the Kenny Veach M Cave mystery, there was a guy there who was about 69 years old. I think he's about 70 years old now. And in that space of time, during that Kenny Veach days, 2020 to about 2022, he was present, active, doing his own videos. He even went out there hiking, documented some of the hikes as well to do with Kenny Veach, the missing hiker. A few valid points raised by him, and, you know, given his arguably expert opinion when it comes to rocks. Now, other times he was a bit wacky, bit all over the place, a bit random. Sometimes it was a bit problematic, but I guess another side was it provided entertainment for some people in a positive, natural way. So, and, you know, he was able to do YouTube. He's gone quiet since, I don't know why, but, you know, he was able to do videos. And even when he did face quite a bit of resistance at times because he might have got something wrong, might have been a bit of misinformation, or he was just giving his own thoughts, but more outside of the box. And, people, answering back. It was more so within the Dylan Rounds case when Jay Silverheels briefly moved upon that back then. But it didn't seem to faze him. But, it depends what mindset he was in. When it comes to Bob Farrell seems fairly passionate in trying to solve the Dylan Rounds case. And obviously with the background to do with being in the police force, it can tie all in, and like how you handle situations and how you go about stuff and think. So it can all play a role. I guess the difference, like with me, when it comes to the Dylan Rounds case, I try and make sense of it, or try and balance a few different things out, debunk a few stuff, think outside of the box, look at different theories and visual elements. But because I'm not emotionally attached to the case like maybe other people are, that's probably why when it comes to resistance, or when it feels like the case isn't going anywhere, it doesn't really put me down. But maybe it does with Bob Farrell, which, isn't the end of the world. But linking back to the age bit, I said I don't know how old you are. As for the, levels of resistance, possibly because of who one associates with another, that can happen. Now, if you're able to incorporate the element of very neutral behaviour, right, and it's probably not that possible. I mean, I think the Shack lady has tried, but it didn't really work out down the line. But I'd say I've managed it to an extent, is where you question everyone, but also listen to everyone. Is that what you do, Bob? Like if you appear on some panels, I guess that's where the element of possibly becoming a target, because I've analysed it in the past, okay? Just being realistic. When it came to a few people maybe breaking away, parting ways from Pancake's channel back then, those who did part ways or shared a different opinion, showed disagreement, were attacked to an extent verbally, more so, called out, just simply because they were thinking differently, or they just wanted to move away or support someone else or listen to someone else. That's where like the target element came in. I think that's probably what led to some people being silenced or just supporting quietly because they didn't want to be called out for supporting someone else. But, someone like Bob Farrell, I guess if you listen to someone or you agree with a certain channel, you make your presence known. Kind of like Bob himself. It's weird that I'm talking in third person, but it's both towards Bob and people watching in general, okay? Bob's appeared on my channel at times. I think he was typing in capital letters. It was a bit like a Kathy Waters situation, but it's okay. I think he was typing in capital letters because he was kind of passionate at the time with what he was thinking, to do with something to do with Candice Cooley, Justin Rounds, maybe the frustration now of how things have gone about and not, listening or accepting that plea deal, turning it down instead, which may not be the most practical of things, I think at the end of the day, as I said, you do what you need to do, Bob. Of course, you should be able to associate yourself with whoever you want. Sometimes it might work out, other times it won't, and in this situation, it may not be working out. Does it fade away? At least from my experience, yes. It can always come back, of course, or in a different scenario, a different case, but it can fade out. At the end of the day, the key ultimate factor, Bob, is it's a stamina war. Now, does that link back to age, performance, ability, mental capacity? Do you have to be of a certain level to be able to outdo others with stamina? I mean, I guess one way of looking at it, you look at the Shack lady, just in terms of being able to do video live streams for like 10 hours, 11 hours long, although it can be quite wearing. She was able to manage it and do it in the past. So that's like a little sign there. As for me, just because of experience with previous cases, okay, the extreme balancing act of all the different theories, the possible facts, and all the BS in the background and the drama. I'm able to balance it all out. Maybe other people can't, but I just think if it's not quite possible to do that level of balancing, then possibly just question and listen to all the stuff without going too all in, if that makes sense, Bob. Obviously, Bob will have his own strategies, ideas, okay, and actions as he's implemented so far within like this case community. But I guess when you listen to something, some information passed on from someone, even if it's someone you know, just a level of caution. When it comes to presenting that supposed information, it can still be presented, but just specific wording to avoid that external resistance, right? I think at the end of the day, if you're able to demonstrate a little bit of balance just through the use of specific wording, right? Not only does it reduce the overall tension in one's, psychological capacity, but it also reduces the external resistance within humans, right? Sometimes the resistance is because you're passing on supposed information which may not be the most popular opinion, or some people out there will not truly agree with it, or in the eyes of them at least may think it's complete misinformation. But it's still possible to talk about misinformation, theories, outside of the box thoughts, or straight up rumours, just with specific wording. Okay, you get that balancing in. You can still do the videos, you can still do your talks, you can still do your discussions, but you also reduce the tension and resistance within others out there at the same time. And some can say, no, it won't work. No, it doesn't work. I've managed it. It's somewhat possible. Okay. Is it one of those situations where maybe it's only doable as if you were on the fence or very neutral to begin with in the start of the case? I mean, that could be one major factor, but it's still worth trying, right? I mean, at the end of the day, with this case, as I said, stamina war. Most people have moved on from the case, both viewers, statistically speaking, but also I'd say the YouTubers, because like the Tyler Fellas, the Zav Girls, maybe No Thanks, kind of, they've all moved on to other cases, right? But there'll be some that have stuck around for a fair bit. Who would they be? You could argue Ty Corbyn, Lance Kelly, definitely. Even if people don't agree with what he's doing, he's definitely been consistent and stuck around, right? Me, and then like the viewers you may come across, and the ones that are mainly on my channel too, they're what you'd call regular people, consistent with the case. Sure, it might get repetitive at times, but I'm sure you agree, Bob, that there's twists and turns within the case. And I think with those twists and turns, changing, switching of information, but also hearing it from different sources, different people out there, third-party people you may be in contact with, like how Bob said in the video, it kind of, causes confusion, maybe a little bit of frustration and headaches, trying to process it all in the head. A lot of talk, a lot of rumours. Was there much progress being made, or is there much clarity at the end of the day? Well, as I said, the balancing act takes place once again, even before you've processed the information or started talking about it online. It's just trying to make sense of it all to begin with, right? Whether you're going in right at the deep end because you weren't around since day one. I wasn't really around since day one, so I kind of jumped in at the deep end, but what I did was just have a quick look at what was currently being talked about, the supposed facts at the time, and then slowly I just started thinking outside of the box and doing my own stuff, my own thoughts, my own analysis. Was it risky? Yes, because at the time it was considered going against the facts, and I did receive criticism in the early days, but as time went on and as things unraveled and went backwards and things switched and changed, it became evident that thinking outside of the box and thinking for yourself was the way to go, because of the way the case was and maybe still is now, right? So there's that to take in mind. But linking back to you, when it comes to hearing about all this information, supposed intel left, right and centre, you can listen to it, but maybe not internalise it, right? You internalise it, you may become somewhat comfortable with what you think is the case, what you think is reality, but then next thing you know, everything's turned upside down and something else has been said. I've come across it in the past where people have come forth with either key dates, key stats, you know, just the way they present themselves. They seem like they know what they're doing or know what they're saying, and then it's been completely debunked afterwards. And in the early days, it was almost like a stun effect. You know, you kind of set back a little bit and you're thinking, oh shit, all that time, kind of wasted. That thinking, waste of time, the odd bit of confusion, and I wouldn't say headaches. I don't really get headaches, but you know, other humans would in that scenario. So things like that occurring, and all for what? Just for it to be corrected down the line. That's why sometimes when you're in the process of listening to these rumours and talks by people, whether it be locals, people further afar, other contexts out there, maybe higher authorities, like, you know, Bob's able to be in that scenario with his past experience, right? It's still worth holding off and checking if there is a bit of a consensus. That's the next part, right? If you're able, Bob, to be in a situation where you hear information from different sources, all independent people who don't know one another, and they come out with the same, you know, level of accuracy when it comes to a point made, an observation made, an event which may have occurred at a certain date, time, year, right? If it's consistent, then you could argue it's more believable, okay? The reason why there's so much switching and changing is because there's so many different opinions and different witnesses from what they can recount, right? When it came to the 24th of April, Brenner's court hearing, which wasn't that successful, there was a level of consistency there with what Candice Cooley was saying partially, and what another witness was saying who was there, who passed it on to one of the Montello locals, and also Glorindellen too, okay? But there was a few points there that did switch and change and were of different opinions. Like, one person believed Brenner was ill. I think Glorindellen agreed as well that Brenner appeared ill, but then Candice Cooley had a completely different idea and said he's not ill whatsoever, right? Arguably, to an extent, it's all down to perception, okay? If they haven't reached out to the medical people there or the ones who look after Brenner, then you're not going to know. So it's just like the witnesses that are present, they see what they see and then say from what they've seen, and it will differ because everyone has different perceptions and opinions on certain things. But that's just a small sample group. You know, in other scenarios, I'll give you one semi-successful one, Bob, when it came to the rain, okay? In the past, I had no clue whether it rained or not. Some said it did, others said it didn't, okay? Back and forth, Bob. Fast forward to a couple of months ago, it was the one time where there was true consistency with different people, different Montello locals, other people who were just simply visiting the area, not living in Montello, right? And then some other people in between, and just viewers in general. They all independently came out with similar, you know, agreements that yes, it did rain Saturday morning, and there was levels of reasoning ability by some of the Montello locals saying, yes, it rained here at this time, but it could have rained later on in Lucin, Utah, just simply because of the timing, time zone, and the way the clouds move over. So there was rational thinking there, and that was on my channel. So because there was a consensus level of accuracy in different people, independent people agreeing separately that it rained here and there, and that they used reasoning ability, critical thinking, you know, being practical as well about when it could have rained and when it didn't, based off depending where you're from. It just like reinforced it. And what was also successful was there wasn't really any switching or changing or denial or resistance in the background. That was kind of toned down at the time. So there was a level of being able to think, breathe and think. Now, granted, it may have been around a time when Pancake's channel was shut down or temporarily shut down for that 1 week ban, or maybe the time when Jim Terry's channel was shut down for that 1 week ban. There was maybe a little bit more silence, a bit more breathing space. Now, maybe Bob doesn't agree with that because I know he may support other channels out there and stuff, but at least from my reality, my experience, there's a level of silence, a level of breathing space, breathing room. Then after that, yes, it became chaotic. Yes, there was levels of degeneracy. Yes, it went a bit downhill and other people got pissed off, but eventually it reached a bit of a baseline, evened its way out. The whip had to be used. Now, Bob, you might be confused with the whip. That's understandable, but external measures are needed to maintain a level of focus, right? So I don't know if it would work with you, Bob, having a whip. I don't know, but it worked in this case. And as for, I believe, last night or the night before, obviously a range of different people watching, a couple from maybe Pancake's channel, Pancake's audience, and more so Jim Terry's. And yet, even though there's all these different people here at once, where there would be levels of friction and tension between those type of people with one another, there wasn't a couple of nights ago. It was very focused. The chat was actually pretty quiet, but there was still similar numbers of people watching, okay? And that's after all this time. But then again, stamina war, okay? The longer you're able to last, the more likely there'll be slightly high levels of clarity and breathing room down the line, okay? Completely different scenario, but if they come out with that wording of, if you're being bullied by someone, like high school scenario, if you're being bullied by someone, but you don't really react, or you don't, you act in a different way, eventually the bullies get bored and walk on. Obviously, realistically, that doesn't always work out that way, but it can at times. You apply it to a YouTube situation where you could be facing resistance, you could be facing people coming on in and disrupting your show, at least, let's say. If you're like, F that, screw that, maybe adapt as well, but more importantly, continue. External people out there may get bored or move on. I'd say it's almost like on tandem, like a rotation, okay? At one point, I was receiving resistance here and there, but then it moved on to someone else. Then I think maybe the Shack Lady. Then it moved on to maybe Ellen Berg at one point, and then I moved on to Bob Farrell, but then it faded off. Then it went back on Bob. Because I remember Bob Farrell in the past when it came to the Shack Lady stream where Bob was saying he got hacked or something. I don't know. It seems like at times it can get a little bit dark, it can get a little bit messy, but once again, I think it just ties back to who you associate yourself with. If you're shown you've pledged allegiance to a certain channel, not in that submissive format, but, you seem kind of locked on with who you follow, in that sense at least. The other ones out there who won't agree with that channel, whoever you follow, will end up seeing you, the same enemy as that channel that they don't like. Obviously it shouldn't be like that, but it's just the way it is, okay? And if one is in the presence of others that might have, a bit of a dodgy background, right? Because in a way, from the looks of it, arguably speaking, this case, this true crime missing person case, may have well attracted some slightly dodgy or rougher people, okay? Obviously, you put them all in the same room, sometimes it could be a recipe for disaster. And then obviously if there's levels of disagreement or misunderstandings, that's where the tension starts building and, almost like the catalyst erupts, Bob. And, I think when it comes to handling information or reaching out to certain contacts, because of Bob being in a situation or in the past to do with the police, maybe it's like a duty run situation. Not saying that Bob is duty run, that could be considered an insult, I don't know. But just in terms of background, maybe less focus on the resistance, less focus on all the rumours spreading left, right and centre like Chinese whispers, which could cause headaches within you, Bob, and just simply, despite the age factor, reaffirm your experience with how you dealt and handled things in the past, because, you know, you've got a bit of a police background or something, and you had to handle things back then. You're trying to play it again once again here. Now, I guess the only positive is it's not exactly a physical situation or scenario. It's not taxing on the body in that sense because it's online. Maybe the psychological warfare could be a bit problematic at times. Yes, just depends who you come across, right? I mean, I can do an individual video at some point from my experience, but maybe I have come across dangerous people. Maybe I have come across rough individuals, but at least how they've been towards me, it's been fairly neutral. So I appreciate that. Shout out to them. I know not everyone will agree with that shout out, but you know, you just acknowledge what's working and you can also acknowledge what isn't. Okay. So end of the day, keywords to take from this, Bob: do what you need to do, stamina war, check for consensus, check for consistency, check for independent reasoning ability. When you do get levels of resistance, it could either be because you associate yourself with someone that they don't like, so then they treat you as an enemy as well, or it could possibly be because you're getting too close to the truth. That's always a possibility. I came across that within the Kenny Veach case, levels of resistance like that. Ty Corbin, Lance Kelly supposedly came across that type of stuff as well when they were out searching, when they were searching together in the early days, okay? Was that because they were getting too close to a particular area? Maybe. They kind of suggested it themselves. Well, shouldn't that be taken into practice then, or put into practice, that if you're receiving resistance at a certain time in a certain area, isn't that a hotspot then? You could infer from it like that, right? And take action there. Now, just an external side point, as for Ty Corbin, if you're watching or if anyone can pass the message on, even if it doesn't work out, I'll do it myself, but just for time efficiency sake, Ty Corbin, can you confirm whether you or someone else has been within the area of Owl Spring, Lucin, Utah? Owl Spring. It's near Rabbit Spring Reservoir, slightly, I think, north. Okay, just let me know. You might be thinking, well, what's that got to do with that? It's just because Bibbins suggested it as a place of interest, and then some random channel on YouTube reaching out to Lance Kelly called Prospector Gold said almost the same thing, like nearby. One said Owl Spring, the other one said Rabbit Spring Reservoir, but they're literally close to each other. One was saying that's where Dylan could be, Bibbins. The other one, Prospector, saying that's where Dylan Round's remains were found. Very weird that was. Two different people that likely don't know one another, aren't in the proximity of one another, came out with a specific location like that level of consistency. So you can get levels of consistency of intrigue like that, then levels of consistency with more believable, you know, scenarios, okay? And I think the only final factor is Bob, okay? And you'd probably be aware of it yourself if you've listened to witness reports or people reaching out down the line in the past. Some people may act like they know what they're doing. You know, they might try and dress or look intelligent. That's one way of getting points across. Some people will be very consistent and repetitive with what they say as a form of brainwashing, as we've seen elsewhere, robotic type behavior and movements. Some people may come out with fancy stats, dates, sources like that. Still doesn't mean to say it's the actual truth, okay? Because as I said, I've come across it in the past when some gave out actual dates and told a story and it seemed believable compared to the typical younger squeaker that would say, oh my God, I ran across the desert and I saw a winged creature. I ran the other way. And that was it. And it's like, yeah. But someone that sets the tone and words it more appropriately, it can seem more believable. But once again, it can still be seen as a trap. Okay? So levels of questioning, levels of awareness, alertness, Do you have to be alert 24/7? Not really. But if you're doing YouTube quite frequently, okay, then maybe, yes, you do need to be somewhat alert 24/7, okay? Probably ties in line with me because of all the observations, predictions, as well as certain terms I've created myself throughout time, okay? So, Bob Farrell recently started doing videos on his channel, okay, so it is a recent thing, and that might be another explanation of resistance. You're not a new channel because you have been around, okay? Your channel, it's been around, but as for content, recent, if I'm correct in saying. So it's like, in the eyes of some people, the latest, hottest, next subject, right? So that's why there might be intensity with resistance and being bombarded with all kinds of bombastic idiosyncratic behavior, okay? It can happen. But stick around, could fade out, could fade away. Just simply changing the topic, the discussions, a different case, a different theme can really throw people off. When I've done my videos, sure, Dylan rounds, it'll bring in, you know, a couple of people, right, fair few. But then next thing you know, if I do a video of me sat here talking about like a video game or something else like that, a review of a film, it'll go from 1,000 views to about 50, okay? You see how drastically it drops off, but one positive is it filters out the, you know, the disruptive people at times. Sometimes disruptive people appear with certain themes or topics which they may be interested in or originate from. And obviously with the Dylan Rounds case, it seems to be a breeding ground over time for certain levels of inappropriate behaviour in terms of like dealing with the Dylan Rounds case. I have acknowledged in the past that it felt at times that maybe some people who were present didn't really know much about Dylan Rounds. They're just here to just hang out, and then others are here to just piss about, right? And you know, people can do what they want technically at the end of the day, but sometimes a level of focus is needed, right? Especially when you're talking about important points. Someone like Bob Farrell, who, you know, from the looks of it, takes this case quite seriously. That level of disruption probably isn't helpful at all. I think the other factor which could tail in with the levels of resistance is last man standing scenario, okay? With other channels moving on to other cases, that filters out some of the resistance, right? Those people that may have been following or hounding, witch hunting certain channels, those channels have moved on for other reasons. So then it leaves that audience, that crowd behind, so then they move to the next situation. It's like a refugee scenario, refugee crisis. Not as bad as the UK though, but getting there. So they move on to somewhere else, move on to another channel. That can be both good people, but also bad people. From my experience, Bob, when Pancake's channel was temporarily banned, more so when Jim Terry's was temporarily banned, obviously people still followed those channels elsewhere, such as on Rumble, but others, and some multitasked, can't say the word, ended up coming onto my channel, right? So that's why some of my regular people are saying that there's lots of new names because of that. And I guess ever since, even though Jim Terry, for example, has got his channel back, some people have decided to stay, which is good of them, right? But in general, there is arguably significantly less people covering the Dylan Rounds case now in comparison to months ago. So the pre-existing channels that are still covering it, they can still be a target, but for like new people coming in, it's like shark infested waters, right? Cafe waters, deep waters. Well, I don't know there about the parrot. I don't know if the parrot can swim, but you know, it's almost like seen as fresh meat, a new scent within the ocean. So everyone starts nibbling at you, Bob, possibly, right? So there's that as well. So two main factors I'd say which group in the levels of resistance would be who you associate with, that can lead to being targeted, right? Who you affiliate with, and also depending how many people are left standing. If there's less people standing, but you're still there, then people will be directed to you. And of course, that can be good people, but also bad people. I saw that Just Eddie was talking about networking and all of this and that. I think, yeah, I think that's evident within the Dylan Rounds case and community. You've seen a range of different channels that have become semi-established, right? You could argue Bella V's channel growing with a bit of traction at some point. Jim Terry's been developed, origins from Dylan Rounds as for content and building the platform there. Most definitely Pancakes, Shack Lady as well in terms of stats, but arguably speaking, they've all assisted one another at a certain point at time, right? They've all helped one another, even if they have stabbed one another, maybe to an extent in the back, or you know, they've pledged allegiance and then they've walked away at a later point through disagreements and misunderstandings, but they have all been established because of networking and helping one another out. The reality with me, I've not relied on networking. I know some people could say that's problematic, but I'm just doing my own thing, keeping my head down just the way I am. I'm quiet in real life, but I've not relied on networking. I've not relied on being advertised externally elsewhere, like on other platforms or anything like that. I've just been doing my own thing. As for how did it all begin? Well, simply I covered a Kenny Veach video at the time because I thought it was the right time to do it, and that was the start of 2020. It got a fair few views and I thought, well, I must be doing something right, so I'll just keep doing videos on that. And because of the consistency and frequency, nowhere near the extremes of what it's been like over the last year recently. This has been on another level, immeasurable, okay? But with the Kenny Veach days, not as often, but keeping up with the case and focusing to one thing, there's a level of stability. And because there's a level of stability and a level of frequency in a way, that's why people gathered. And because there wasn't many people covering it, more people flocked either to my channel or Sean Horlacker's channel or Jeff Clark's channel at the time, who were involved in the case themselves, right? But it also led to the resistance, as I was telling about you, Bob, earlier on, that there was greater concentration of resistance towards me and not as much spread out within the Dylan Rounds case, although a lot of people have been impacted, you know, almost like a war. People have lost out or lost things, missed out on stuff, been hurt in some way, maybe more psychologically, or as for the status, their reputation online, let's say, their channel or something, verbal exchanges, negative ones. More people have been greatly impacted as for like the general population, right? But that's a positive. More people have been for it. More people should understand. If it's more spread out, then it's a bit more filtered. It's not as intense. But as for you, Bob, because you've come in at a time there's less channels doing what they're doing on Dylan Rounds, the focus is more on you. So I probably didn't face the same extremity as you, Bob, but back then in the Kenny Veach case, because there wasn't many people, the resistance mainly all flocked towards me, right? So it's a bit of a 2-on-1, 3-on-1 scenario at times, right? So there is that. Anything else? As for the power dynamics, Bob, big factor within the Dylan Rounds case. The power dynamics do vary, okay? There is almost like a level of control and power, whether it be people fantasizing or desperately wanting to become mods. Yes, people do joke about it on my channel, which is fine, and I understand that. But in other cases, other channels where people have become mods, have been appointed mods, the power has got to their head. It's led to just a slight disagreement. Oh, I'm blocking you. You're getting timed out. And then it's led to a bit of resistance, argumentations with the actual channel owner who wasn't responsible for it. And it's basically led to, you know, falling outs and reputation being harmed simply because someone was allowed to become a mod and that mod got a bit reckless, right? So sometimes it's best not to have any mods. Maybe in your case, Bob Farrell, it's necessary with what you may have come across. I guess it just varies. And obviously, depending on how you do your formats, that plays another role, because I do live video premieres. I'm not doing live call-ins or live interviews. And that's probably another factor which reduces quite a bit of that resistance. I think some people were saying that on Bob's live streams, people calling in or joining in and doing inappropriate or sharing inappropriate stuff. Can that be avoided? Not really. It all comes down to trust factor and alertness. If you're to believe that this is who they really are, or they mean well, they come on and then they show a different side to them, Yes, it can lead to trust issues, and it can be hard to detect the next time because they may appear differently, or it might be someone completely different. It's a bit of a tricky situation. I've not been through that, so I wouldn't really know. I mean, at least for comments on YouTube, when people have showed up, you get kind of like get a sense, a feeling of who could be who or what they're about. If it's like a default profile, a new account just set up recently between 2022 and 2023, a high chance that there could be a bit of resistance brewing. So you know what to expect. You're anticipating it, you're prepared for it. I think maybe the way to avoid it is to do the live streams and only allow people onto the channel that you actually know or have been in contact with for quite some time over the course of this Dylan Rounds case. So you reduce the visual inappropriate stuff popping up on screen, because look, this is the thing, like with the power dynamics, if people don't get their way, they may try and force their way in. They might try and penetrate through those lines. More so on my channel, because I don't do live premieres, call-ins, interviews, I don't allow people onto my channel, partially because it would probably be the downfall in the long term. I've seen how it's worked with other people, okay? That's just being realistic, my opinion, my thoughts, okay? But because I don't allow it to happen, it leads to, what do you say, like a level of sexual frustration. They want to have that power, they want to be able to come on, but they're not allowed to. So, you know, it kind of like denies them of that in that area, that aspect. Same with the mods scenario, but it doesn't lead to like a greater negative outcome. They just end up thinking, right, I'm bored by this, you know, I can't do this, I can't do that here, so I'll just move on elsewhere. Maybe if you're a channel which allows all these different opportunities of call-ins, live streams, interaction more greater, and mods too, that level of interaction can lead to more opportunities of people trying to take over, either just simply taking over or trying to take you down, right? So people coming onto the channel, that's that's literal sabotaging at times, right? That's here with the target situation. If you're a target, people will try and take you out in different ways, right? Don't always have to be physical, it can be just like digital, right? So it's a bit of a messy scenario, right? Is it possible to avoid it? Yes, there's different steps to avoid that. I said the earlier steps, what I said, maybe even experimenting with normal video uploads. I noticed you did that with that recent video of yours, your last one, standard video format. People could still leave comments down below in support or whatever, share their thoughts. Obviously the live interaction is lacking, but it also basically blocks out a fair bit of resistance, right? Live video premieres, you get the live aspect in the chat, people can chat along and still have fun, just that people can't call in, okay? Different levels may work differently for different people, okay? So hopefully that makes sense, Bob Farrell. If you do have any questions, or if any other humans have any questions, you can list it down below. End of the day, this video isn't some kind of do-gooder, positive, delusional, rainbow, sparkly coloured thing where you bend over backwards. It's just being realistic, okay? Dark reality and simple, realistic thoughts based off from what I've seen and documented along the way, because I have analysed humans for over 9+ years, so I've got an idea of how certain things play out, okay? So hopefully that helped to an extent, Bob Farrell. And once again, if Bob doesn't watch this video, everybody watching, make sure to share it to him in some way so he can watch it, he finds out about it, because I tried tagging him and it didn't seem to work, okay? So I think we'll leave it there. And maybe in general, for people doing their own videos or their own channels, maybe people can take notes from this key critical video, okay? Now, I think there will be a Dylan Rounds video coming up, just gotta plan it out and try and work things out. But I think more so tomorrow might be more of a light-hearted video, okay? As for Betty Hayward and the story time, that will come, of course. More so, it'll be noticeable in the title of the video at the time, and me mentioning Betty, you'll know when it comes, okay? I know Betty Hayward misunderstood the brief recently with one of my previous videos, but you know, when it is happening, it'll be titled, okay? You'll know. So that's under control. Anyway, we'll see what happens next. Time will tell. Thanks for watching. Goodbye and good night. It's very late right now. It's very dark. No spiders have infiltrated me, not that I know of, unless any have crawled on my shoulder or back area. Who knows? Got to make my way out of this shed. Nope, it's not exactly a shack. Okay, the wind hasn't blown it over, so that's all good. So yeah, goodbye and good night for now.